What's going on, Badger Nation? Welcome to the PPC Den podcast, your podcast that's all about Amazon advertising. I am super stoked today, special episode, because today the guest co-host is none other than my friend, Elizabeth Greene. Elizabeth, you are, I always like to pump up. You are an incredible agency owner from Junglr, PPC. The URL is just Junglr, JUNGLR.com.
Yes.
So I'm stoked to have you back. You've been on the show a couple times. Thanks for coming back. And every episode that we produce together, it's 5 stars. It's good stuff.
That's awesome.
We've covered, I think my favorite one that we've done together so far was hidden ratios in your PPC campaigns, where we touched on a lot of hidden different ratios that people have going on in their campaigns. That was a good one.
Yeah, it definitely was a fun one.
And we also have something else in common. We are not with our friends in Las Vegas right now. We're recording this the week of Prosper. Maybe next year I'll go.
I know. I'm seeing the pictures. It's okay. There are other things.
I'm seeing the pics. I'm getting some serious FOMO, trying to get some good stuff done. But I'm very happy that you're here on the show. Today, we're going to be talking about a topic that I was actually messaging some people on LinkedIn about, just trying to get some people's different thoughts about what to do with low-click, no-sale keywords, or low-click and low sale keywords, you know, these things with like 5 clicks and 1 order, or 5 clicks and no orders. It was just something that I spent a lot of time thinking about. It seemed like for 5 calls in a row, every single person that I talked to had a lot of these like low click or like low to no order keywords. And I figured this was up for you too, because we got on the phone and we had a good discussion on it. We're like, let's turn this into a podcast. Very, very common scenario. We're going to get to that in a second. But one episode we did together, Elizabeth, was episode 117 of this podcast. And we talked about broad in Amazon, like using broad match. And we had talked about how, you know, does Amazon put a preference on broad campaigns, broad keywords? And you had a quick update since episode 117. I mean, it's been maybe a couple of months since then. So what's your update on broad and sponsored brands for everyone who previously listened to episode 117?
Yeah, so I had a very recent scenario. I'm saying recent within the last 2 to 3 weeks. So I can't tell you how the extended performance is going to be because I haven't tested it yet. But basically, I was running up against an issue where I had a client who had some video ads. They definitely want to run them in their space. So we did best practices, go into the search and reports, what's already converting in their sponsored products. Let's retarget it. We know these keywords work. We know they get high volumes of sales. We can see the traffic. Good keywords, cross-referencing for, are we indexed for these? Like all the things you should be doing. Ran them in sponsored brands video. We had no impressions. And when I say no impressions, I mean 0 impressions. Despite astronomical bids, despite trying to be aggressive, despite we know these keywords work, check the indexing, and we know that there's video ads on them, check that. There's video ads on page 2, 3, 4. Like, we should be getting something here. And there was absolutely nothing. So went back and forth with the client, troubleshooting, trying bids. The bids were already really high. We weren't really interested. We wanted to test them. We weren't interested in spending like crazy on these. So one idea I threw out is, well, let's try broad, because one thing you should know about broad match in a sponsored brand ad versus a sponsored product is it functions differently. If you come from like a Google world or some other PPC background, you may have heard of something called modified broad match. That kind of gets in, there's no reason you should like mess with it. But basically sponsored products, broad match functions like a modified broad match by default. Basically means if you put in a keyword, every single individual word within that keyword has to be contained within the search. That doesn't happen in a sponsored brand ad. Amazon will basically, it's possible that some of the keywords can be contained within the search. It's possible that none of the individual words can be contained within the search. So as you can see, it can definitely increase impressions. You might have seen a pop-up a little while ago that Amazon said, if you use broad in your brand ads, you will get more impressions. And that is true. That doesn't mean you're going to get better impressions. So we don't use those normally as part of our regular procedures. However, in this case, it made a lot of sense too because nothing else worked. So basically we took all the keywords we were using, we put them in a broad, put them in decent bids, and right now we're sitting at a lot of impressions and a decent amount of ad spend, enough that we can now go in and kind of see what's working and make tweaks.
So this is kind of another example of Amazon does put a lot of preference on broad, and it's even more prominent in sponsored brands. So that's the update from episode 117.
There we go.
And with that, let's jump in to the main topic of this week, which is what to do about low click, no sales, or low click, low sales keywords. Let's run the transition. Alrighty. So this is a very, 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 very common scenario where you are trying to improve your campaigns. You're trying to get your ACOS better, trying to boost sales. You open up your campaigns, you make your way to a particular campaign. You look at that list of keywords. Maybe you've got 30 keywords. Maybe you've got 300 keywords in this ad group. I'm not judging right now. So you've got a whole bunch of keywords that you're looking at, and you might see that you have an overwhelming majority of things with 0 clicks, 0 orders. 2 clicks, 0 orders. 6 clicks, 0 orders. 5 clicks, 1 order. You might have a huge swath of these for a variety of reasons. Maybe it's a new account, new product. Maybe you're just trying to scale, so you dropped a whole bunch of new keywords in there. This is very common. Do you also find that this is common when people come to you looking to scale and grow their campaigns?
Hey Badger Nation, we experienced technical difficulties in the making of this podcast. Please excuse the audio and video quality, but thank you so much for understanding. And now, let's get to the show.
So do you also feel like a lot of people come to you with this exact same situation with with a ton of their keywords?
Yeah. No, it definitely is one of those things that's very tricky to navigate. So I think it's one thing that I've thought about often. Obviously, you're thinking about it because you're asking the question, because one of the issues with this type of like keyword performance, or however you want to call it, is the fact that there's very limited data. And so if you've been around the Amazon advertising space or any like advertising data-driven type, scenario, you're going to hear, we need data. Do you have data? Analyze your data. And like when it comes to this, I think there's ways to think about it logically, which we're going to go through in this episode. But I don't know if there's any real cut and dry way to go about, maybe optimizing this type of keyword. So we've discussed and we kind of go through, we're going to have like a benchmark, a way that you can kind of analyze how this is affecting your account. And then based on that analysis, kind of go through our logical troubleshooting steps. But yeah, no, it's definitely something we deal with a lot, and something that I think is kind of difficult to deal with, if I'm being honest. Even for those of us who've been around the block for a while, we know what we're doing. There's always going to be these things you have to kind of try and, figure out for yourself.
Yeah, these keywords that have very few clicks, I sometimes refer to them as ACOS jumpers, like keywords that over the course of 30 days have, 5 clicks, 1 order. And, maybe they're spending $1 a click, they generate $20 in sales. That's like a 20-25% ACOS approximately. Then if they get 5 more clicks, all of a sudden this keyword can jump to 50% ACOS. And then if it gets and that 11th click gets an order, it'll fall way back down. So there's so much volatility that comes in with things that have 1 order. Sometimes 2 orders, sometimes 5 clicks, where it's got spend but no orders. It gets an order and now it's got a great ACOS, but then it gets a few more clicks and it's got a really bad ACOS. So it can jump around pretty sporadically. And like, what do you consider, to be in this category of like low click, low order, or no order type keywords? How do you could think of this bucket of keywords?
Yeah, no, definitely. what you said. I think maybe under 5 clicks, but like 7 clicks, us particularly, once we start getting towards 8 clicks, we might make a determination on how to make an adjustment. I mean, like when I say adjustment, I mean routine adjustments. It's not that we don't, obviously adjust other things. It's, kind of what's your routine? What do you normally go through? But one other thing that can kind of throw like a if statement into this scenario is the product. I think a lot of people understand that if you have a high priced product, you're probably just going to naturally have a lower conversion rate because people tend to think a little bit more the more money they spend. So in that scenario, low clicks might be 10, might be 15, because just naturally that's where your product falls. So I think it's reasonable to say maybe 5 to 7 clicks or less is what we consider low. But then also adding in that caveat that it is relative to the product, relative to the space as well.
Yeah. So like thinking of your average conversion rate for a keyword and understanding that you're going to have things below average and above average. So it's not as if, my average is 10 clicks per order on average. So I'm just going to, turn off everything that has over 11 clicks and no orders. We'll talk about different scenarios of, when to be more aggressive with pausing things or lowering bids and when to be a little bit more conservative with it. So you want to think of your average and then understand that things are going to be above and below your average. Sometimes helpful to think about, well, is this a below average converter? Well, then it needs a lower click, things of that nature. So before we even talk about how to deal with these keywords, these low click, low order, no order keywords, there's a couple of considerations to determine what lane you should be in. Like, should you be in a lane where you aggressively attack these low click, no orders, and or should you be in a lane where you're actually increasing their bids? So there's a couple different things to consider, and you had some really good ideas into how people can easily determine if they should be going after these and raising their bids, or if they should be going after them and lowering their bids on these low click keywords. So walk me through what considerations you make to determine what lane you should be in.
Yeah. And so this is one thing we routinely look at with accounts that we are looking to take on. So this is kind of an analysis we perform on initial accounts just to say, hey, where does the account sit? Because you might have a lot of keywords, you might have a lot of campaigns, but what we want to do is just quickly pierce through and determine what do you have, how is it currently working? So one thing we'll look at is spend allocations, meaning let's take a look at the entire spend. So all of the ad spend across everything in your account. Unfortunately, the way that the reports, Amazon does divide up sponsored products, sponsor brand reports. So you do kind of have to look at this in pieces. So you can sum everything that's possible, but the easiest way is just to look at stagnant reports and segment it. But basically we say, okay, let's just sum everything, and then let's sum things that are getting sales, and then let's sum the spend of things that are not getting sales. And then you can actually put that into a ratio, and it fits nicely into pie charts or other ways to, you can even visually analyze this and just say, all right, so where's my spend going? Because we're going to kind of get into, okay, so which lane do you fall in? But one of the things that we kind of, helps us visualize is if you have, say, maybe only have a handful of keywords that are doing anything for your product, but if the majority of your ad spend is going to those keywords that are doing something for you, they are moving the needle, then your account, while obviously it can use some fixing because you have a high amount of keywords that aren't generating you sales, they're not sucking up a lot of the resources. So overall, your ACOS might be fine and your tacos might be fine. So it's not as much of a triage situation where, if you're getting 50% of your sales are 50% of the spend is going to keywords that are generating sales, but then you got another 50 that's it's not doing anything for the product. It's not the fact that maybe you only have a couple sales, and we'll get into that. You can go deeper into this analysis, but right off the bat, you can say, all right, so I have a high amount of spend going to keywords that are not generating me sales. They're not getting me conversions. Most likely, I mean, if you're not getting conversions, realistically, you're probably not even moving the needle on helping increase organic ranking or any of the other side benefits that can come through advertising. This can be split across, again, we're talking about it's possible to have it split across like low click keywords. You might just have a bunch of bleeders, but this kind of just gives you like a quick snapshot. Okay, how healthy is the account? Where does my account sit? How much of like an all hands on deck situation is this? Or do I, can I take a little while to think about this? Maybe take a week or so just to peruse through, nip it here and there versus no, we need to dig into this and we need to fix this like ASAP.
Right. It's the classic case of, am I comfortable with my current ACOS? If no, I better go take swifter action. I'm probably going to be looking to lower bids or lower visibility on these things with low clicks that are yet to be proven. If I am very comfortable with my ACOS, I can go in there and give it more leeway into my threshold for getting clicks. And I also think it's not, you can always unpause things or retest things again into the future. So I think it's very normal and should be encouraged to go in there and take swift action on things to get your ACOS under control. And to take that even further with a more scientific analysis, it's like how much spend is going towards non-converting keywords, how much spend is going towards keywords with only one order in 30 days, only 2 orders in 30 days, 3 orders in 30 days. And you can start to identify, hey, if I have a lot of my spend going to things with, only 1 order in a 30-day time frame, that could be a sign that you have a lot of ACOS jumpers. And, that might need you to get more data. So you might want to push those up. It might be that you're uncomfortable with your ACOS. You've got a whole bunch of one order things. You might want to suppress those temporarily until you get it under control. So as we go through this episode, we're going to be talking about first what to do if you do that analysis. You look at your campaign's ACOS. You're pretty comfortable with it. You look at the amount of spend broken out by 0 order keywords, 1 order keywords, 2 orders, 3 and up keywords. You look at all this and you're pretty comfortable with it. From there, you can start to make decisions on all of these low click, low order keywords. And just to get right into that, probably the easiest thing to do first when you're in a scenario where you are comfortable with your ACOS, you are comfortable with the buckets of spend on 0, 1, 2, 3 orders per month. Easiest thing, run a filter and start boosting bids on things that have low clicks, but do have an order. So this is something like 5 clicks, 1 order. This is things like 7 clicks, 1 order. Maybe 2 orders from 8 clicks. It doesn't have a huge amount of data over a 30-day time frame, but it's easier to boost what's already there than increase bids on things with no clicks. And I think that's something you mentioned before we hit record. It makes total sense. You're more likely to get another hit from something that already has an order than going and increasing bids on things that have 7 clicks and no orders. So what you said there makes perfect sense.
Yeah, no, exactly. I think it's something you've covered on, I can't pinpoint an episode, but I know it's something you've talked about. Like if the budgets are out, if, you are working really well on this keyword, but you've stifled the bids, maybe playing with placement percentage adjustments. If you're at that level, my opinion is dial in bids first, then worry about that. But if you've done everything else, maybe that's going to be the extra, 10, 20% that, pushes it up. So it's definitely easier to go off of something that does have data that you can kind of increase, that has at least converted. It may not have a good, past track record of converting, but that there is some conversions that are happening. You can test to see if you can increase them versus maybe some of the other things that maybe it works, maybe it didn't. If you have no impressions on it, is it going to work? It might, but it's harder to make that determination versus things that are.
I'm also hesitant to call something with like 5 clicks and 1 order. Let's say it's got a 15% ACOS out of the gate, I'm almost hesitant to call that a good ACOS or a bad ACOS keyword because it can change so swiftly. You know, if that one keyword, 5 clicks, 1 order, gets 5 more clicks, its ACOS could be perceived as like bad. And I feel like that can cloud our analysis when we're looking at things. Putting it in the bucket of low data, I feel like is more appropriate than putting it in a bucket of like good ACOS or bad ACOS when any one order one way or the other, or 5 clicks one way or the other, can change it so much. So like really thinking of these things as like, hey, this is a statistically insignificant amount of data that I have so far. And I need to consider it as such. And I think it's important to remember, if you're tracking this number of how much spend am I spending on things with 1 order per month, you know, it's very possible that it goes from 1 order per month in this past 30 days to then the future 30 days having 0 orders in this next month, or potentially 3 or 5 orders in the next month. So these things can jump around a bit. And I think I like to think of these as like, hey, this is my bucket of ACOS jumper. These are my things that could vary a lot. I need more data on them to know for sure. And it might be that, hey, this is just going to do really well with picking up the one random order that it's going to get. So I need to optimize that appropriately. But in order to really know that for sure, you want to give it a little boost to find out definitively. So that's like this first bucket. You have a pretty good account level ACOS. You have room to test. So you're going to go test these things, give them a little bid bump to push it up a bit. And when we're talking about a bid bump, you know, what are you kind of considering? Are you doing an absolute value like 5, 10, 15 cents, 20, 50 cents? Are you thinking of in terms of percentages? I know how I think about it, but how do you think about it?
So this is actually something I'm looking into testing currently. Historically, I think a lot of people play off percentages. I think percentages actually have their place in a lot of scenarios, but in this particular scenario, I say my gut leans toward, and the only reason I say my gut leans toward is because I haven't personally tested this. So I don't want to say this is the way if I haven't tested it. But in my opinion, a stagnant or a set amount, like you said, 15 cents, 10 cents, might be, or 5 cents even, it might be the way to go. I think it also comes back to, you might want to just take a look at like how big, so if you're comfortable with the percentage, how far away are you from a percentage that you maybe start to get, okay, this is a little high percentage of my spend going towards testing. Because if you're doing like, say, a 10%, even though 10% is low, 2%, 1%, that percentage changes drastically depending on what your starting bid is. So on things that are lower, you might not move the needle enough to really make a determination. On things that are very high, maybe you want that a little bit more. I would say, kind of in, a side note to this, or kind of something that's related to this, would be, I would also probably put a ceiling on this, taking a look at kind of what your bids are, because recognize that these are keywords that don't have a lot of like statistical significance to. So this is going to be testing. Dollars you put towards this are going to be testing. And whenever there's testing done, to kind of put the determination on what, where my keyword cutoff. Now that can be as high as like $3, $5. You might be comfortable going that high to test certain things, but I think kind of determining where that line is for you is probably smart in this scenario.
Yeah. So definitely starting there, things that have low clicks, but have low orders too, giving them a boost with the goal of determining, is this going to be a great, really great keyword that gives me 10 plus orders per month? Or is this going to be one that is just always going to give me a few amount of orders? Bidding helps you understand that, because ideally you get more clicks on it. The next sort of category is going to be low click, no orders yet. And this is where it's important to think about your average conversion rate. You know, how high should you let things go before you almost pull the plug on it? So again, the first lane that we're in is where we are comfortable with our overall ACOS. We are comfortable with the amount of spend that we're spending on zero order keywords. So we want to, get in there and give it some more time, give it some more data. And if we've only got something with, 3 clicks in a month, or 2 clicks in a month, or 5 clicks, or 6 clicks in a month, we want to give that a little bit more time to breathe. So thinking about your average conversion rate for the particular product. If you're getting 10 clicks per order on average, and you're comfortable with your current ACOS, you might want to go 1.5x your average, or 2x your average clicks per order. You might want to push it to, can I get this thing to have 10 clicks before determining if I should pull the plug, 15 clicks, 20 clicks, whatever it might be. You want to find out definitively if it's going to, convert or not. So the threshold at which you go in there and look for keywords that have low clicks but no orders yet should be weighted with whatever the average conversion rate, with the average clicks per order for the entire account. Dealing with that bucket, you really want to be cautious of, because it can be very easy to have this bucket of no order keywords consume, because if you have 500 of them and you want to put 10 clicks on all of them, that's a lot of clicks and a lot of spend for 500 keywords for every single one to get 10 clicks. You're looking at 5,000 new clicks to determine. So like understanding how you do this and what intensity is a really important consideration.
I think that's a really good point to make. So again, I think it goes back to determining like how far or how close are you to that percentage of testing, ad spend testing, like are you? And it's possible you might have, hopefully you should have good campaign naming. So if you have like, say, certain campaigns, like, hey, these were ones that I had intent to test, but maybe they're not really doing anything. Maybe these are my low clicks. Maybe we could start there. So I think there are ways to look at it logically. It doesn't always have to be, I'm never a fan of like the all or nothing scenario. I think there's ways where you can do things in parts and pieces. And I think especially in this scenario, when again, there's limited data, it's going to be a test. Mm-hmm. We want to make logical tests. But at the end of the day, we need to realize that this could or couldn't go the way we hoped. And I think that's kind of everything in advertising is you make the best logical decisions. You put it up in the way that makes the most sense for structure and the most sense to work within the system that we're working in. But then, you kind of have to wait for that data feedback. So this is kind of going to be a way to think about probably moving that data feedback quicker. So you can make more accurate, adjustments for that feedback.
Yes.
But then.
That's super well said. PPCers are not magicians. They're not here to perform something and have something magically change, right? We're like feedback loop optimizers. It's like, well, this is the best practice. Let's apply it. Let's see what it does and then tweak it. Like that's what we do. That's really, really valuable. So we've got those buckets, tiny changes on these bids here. Periodically, because this is low data, you don't want to jolt it too much. So taking a look at where the current CPCs are, giving something, a 10% bid boost once a week, if you do that 2 times in a month, 3 times in a month, that's a pretty significant change. That's from $1 to $1.10 to $1.20 something to $1.40 something. That could be a pretty significant change, especially if you're multiplying this out by a whole bunch of different keywords. And it's pretty interesting too, because the first bucket we're talking about here is what to do when you have a good overall campaign ACOS, where you are pretty comfortable with the amount of spend. You are comfortable with testing and pushing and trying to find new winning keywords. Makes total sense. Go in there, see what has orders, but low clicks, give it a boost to see if you can get more orders out of it. Take a look at things that are relevant but have low clicks, give it a small boost, see what you can get out of it. Now, you might do this, and you might do this to dozens and dozens and dozens, potentially hundreds of keywords. So for it, you could cross over into the second lane, which is where you are uncomfortable with how much you are spending on keywords that have 0 to 1 orders per month, and you don't like your ACOS. So this second bucket is where you are trying to almost reduce testing. Maybe you don't want to do testing on hundreds of keywords at once. Maybe you want to raise the bar on how discerning you are. Like, hey, maybe before I was willing to go to 15 clicks without an order to really do some testing, but maybe now I want to reduce that down to just 7 or 10. So you operate in more loosely, more aggressively when you're comfortable with your ACOS, where you're trying to scale and grow. And then other times where you're not comfortable with your ACOS, you want to get more strict and stringent with how you are letting things go. So I think the first thing to do, like when you're uncomfortable with your ACOS, got to reduce testing. Not necessarily stop it, but just reduce it. And again, same thing. All the keywords that do have a good amount of clicks and do have a good amount of orders, like your consistent converters, that's where the majority of your money should go. Definitely when you're in the situation. So get those bids perfect. And then you have the biggest offenders, which are things with a lot of clicks without any sales. To me, those get heavy down bids because these things have likely already had enough time in the spotlight, that maybe they've got 15, 20, 25 clicks without an order. When we're in ACOS trouble, these things have to go, and they have to go quickly. And what's cool about doing it that way, like finding the most egregious poor performers, the things that have a lot of clicks with no orders, you trim that down. And again, when I say a lot of clicks, that changes because now we are uncomfortable with our ACOS. So you've got more strict. And when you find the things that are in the upper limit of your acceptability, you chop those bids down. And ideally that spend can go towards things that do convert, or you can allocate that spend towards like the next set of keywords that you want to test. So maybe those things that, have 1 order and, 5 clicks, you dedicate some spend there. In this scenario, I really think it's better to focus your testing, like shine the spotlight on a tiny percentage of your account, as opposed to when you are comfortable with your ACOS, you do more testing. When you are uncomfortable with your ACOS, you still want to do testing because you can find good opportunity, but you just want to focus your testing and reduce the amount of things that you are testing. So there's a lot there with, getting that ACOS right.
I 100% agree with that. And I think a good thing to point out is how you said shining the spotlight, not completely eliminating testing, but reducing it, because you want to think about this logically. You can't change what your conversion rate is. I mean, if you want to be technical, you can fix the listing, you can get better with the targeting. But at the end of the day, like your conversion rate is your conversion rate. So if it takes you on average about 10 clicks to determine if something works, if you're making that determination at 5 clicks, you're actually preemptively doing something, and that keyword didn't actually get adequate testing. So yes, you absolutely, if ACOS is high and the amount of spend going towards your testing is high, there are definitely some things here we can reduce. We need to prune it. We need to think about it logically, but realize at the end of the day that kind of what the requirement is for adequate testing is not really going to change. So what hopefully we're going to give you is kind of some ways to kind of, do the constructive analysis on it. For instance, again, high clicks, no sale keywords, that's going to be where the biggest bleeders is in your account. High clicks with no sale search terms, that's where the biggest bleeders are in your account. So you can attack things in a hierarchy that you definitely have data enough to make those decisions. And there's a couple other, kind of benchmarks we're going to think of. Okay, so maybe you want to look here. Maybe this makes the most logical sense to reduce. But again, if you're not testing anything, then, if one of your top keywords search volumes fluctuate, by just the marketplace or by what seasonality is. Things change. So although we do definitely want to double down on what's working, we don't want to put all of our eggs in that basket, because if you're making all the sales on one or two keywords and those one or two keywords drop off the map, or something fluctuates, or a new seller comes in and pushes you out, all of a sudden you're left stranded and there's nothing to fall back on. So again, you want to be logical about this, and kind of recognize what the numbers mean and go about it that way.
Yeah. You also had another really interesting point, like when you are uncomfortable with your ACOS, taking a look at, like, not everything with 5 clicks is created equal, because you can have things with 5 clicks with a great click-through rate, and you can have things with 5 clicks with a bad click-through rate. And when you're uncomfortable with your ACOS, I think the argument is it's time to trim the keywords with high impressions, low click-through rate. You might not need to let that run much longer, because that could be an indication that maybe it's irrelevant.
Yes. So this is, like I said, we're trying to give you like a logical way to analyze the data and then make decisions based on, what those, it's really filters, what those filters reveal. So one thing I've been seeing is high impressions, low click-through rate. High impressions are probably over 1,000 impressions, maybe a little more. Low click-through rate, really low click-through rate, I would say is below 0.1. If you're really trying to look at this, you might do like 0.2, 0.3. Again, it kind of goes back to like knowing what your conversion rates, it's relative to your space, to your products. Now, this is not to say, I'm not saying sort by impressions, sort by low click-through rate, eliminate everything with a low click-through rate. That's not what I'm saying. What I'm saying is this is a filter that helps bring to the top. And what I find often is this will quickly highlight anything that is irrelevant to the product. Now, is not only get judged solely on what the numbers are. Relevancy is honestly a manual process. So you want to do this manually, you want to do this logically, but oftentimes what happens if you're retargeting search terms, there are search terms that you might have retargeted that had only that one sale, which you did want to test, you want to see if you can move the needle on it. But sometimes, although something converted in the past, it was a one-off, and so it got placed into your keywords, and it wasn't actually probably something you should be advertising on. And I find this filter like quickly brings these keywords to the top. So then you can manually go down that list and then just start eliminating things through logic. So it might only have 4 clicks. You might have 3 clicks. You might have gotten up to 7 and 8 clicks. Maybe you adjusted the bid, but then when you actually just analyze it, you realize, well, this is not actually something that makes logical sense to spend on anyway. So I can quickly eliminate these. And there might not even ones that I care to test. Maybe if I've got all my other keywords, sure. If you fall into the first bucket and you're just trying to expand your market, maybe you can show up in some interesting places. But right now we're trying to kind of eliminate those places that don't make sense to show up. And this filter can, help you quickly highlight that.
Yeah, exactly. And you could always retest these again. Testing is something that you can do more aggressively during certain times, and you can do more passively during other times. Meaning, when your ACOS is great, you can test a lot. You can really give those things a big bid jump. When you're being in a cost-cutting mode, you're trying to reduce that ACOS, you can really reduce things, and then you can always revisit it later. So I think that's a shift that sometimes people feel like testing is all, it's like you always have to step on the gas with it, but you don't necessarily need to. There are plenty of times where sometimes the best recommendation might be to take those, 100 keywords that have, 2 clicks a month and just drop them really low. And once your ACOS is under control, you revisit it. And this can especially be helpful before big days like going into Black Friday, going into Q4. If your spend is like, a pipe, and the pipe is breaking off into a whole bunch of different smaller pipes, you're dedicating spend to some things that need testing or some things that aren't going to pan out. And when you close that pipe, the funnel of clicks can be redirected towards things that do have a lot of clicks and do have a lot of orders, and you know definitively. And so that's kind of the logic here when you're over your target ACOS. It's almost like you want to reduce the pipes that you have and dedicate more spend to the things that convert really well, and dedicate more spend to things that are on the brink of shifting from I have low clicks and I'm unsure if it's going to work, to definitively saying, okay, I tested this and it does work, or I tested this and it doesn't work. It's like you want to reduce the amount of wondering, you want to reduce the amount of questions of like, is this keyword going to work or not? And one of the things that you do that, instead of testing 500 keywords at a time, you can test a smaller amount at a time, know for certain if they're going to work or not, and then you can move to the next batch. So doing this before a big day, it just allows you to not do that testing during a day like Prime Day, where your conversion rates are going to jump. Wouldn't it be nice if they jumped the most on the things that you know are going to convert really well? Like, it's just easier to go from, hey, this keyword gets 50 orders a day to 75 orders a day, as opposed to, you know, I got 5 clicks, no orders, maybe it'll get 1 today. It's like where you funnel that money is really meaningful.
No, absolutely agree. And actually, one quick tip on this that I personally like to use if I'm like pruning things that I maybe have some data on, I'm not sure if they work, I'm not sure if they want, and I want to revisit them later for testing. One thing I'll do in lieu of just pausing it, because oftentimes if something we determine, okay, this absolutely doesn't work for your product, I'm going to pause this. I like to use just really reduced bids. So in sponsored products, the lowest bid you can put on it is 2 cents. I want to say it's like 25 cents for sponsored brands. So sometimes I'll put like a low bid. It's not going to get any. If you get impressions in a sale at 2 cents, like that's amazing. Right. Well done. It's not going to happen realistically. So this is just a way for me to like set some sort of indicator. You can do 5 cents if you want to, like, hey, maybe I'll let it run at like a 5 cent bid or something. I use them almost like as placeholders and indicators to myself. So if I have gone through, because most often what happens in this scenario is you have done a lot of keyword research. You've gone through, you've analyzed, you put them in your campaigns, and then along the way you realize, oh, you know, I put too many in there, or maybe this isn't going the way I wanted to, but you've actually put in a lot of legwork to get those keywords, to get those campaigns set up. And so you don't necessarily need to completely throw all that out. So oftentimes what I'll do is put some sort of bid placeholder. So then later on the road, if I go into a campaign, I say, oh, I have all of these hundreds of keywords with 2 cent bids. These are obviously one I found. Oh, here's a bunch of good keywords. You can actually, instead of having to recreate things or manage things, you can actually go through, just reinvigorate them with a better bid and retest when the time comes.
Yeah, that's exactly. Yeah, when you're uncomfortable with your ACOS, you don't necessarily want to pause them. Give them a very, very low bid, 2 cents, 10 cents. And then you can, that's almost like your reminder to go back and revisit these things once your ACOS is under control. So this is a topic that I know that I've never talked about on the show before, where it's like you operate your bid optimization slightly different when you are comfortable with your account performance, and then when you are uncomfortable with your account performance. Like, what lane are you in? And obviously, when you are comfortable with your ACOS, hey, all those things with low click, low orders, give them some more time in the spotlight. Like, let's juice those up. Let's make sure we're not budget limited, of course, over there, because you don't want to increase bids too much on a limit your budget and then end up somehow with fewer clicks. So that's a consideration there. But when you're comfortable with that ACOS, give it some juice. When you're uncomfortable with your ACOS, get more conservative. First place to start is, everything that has clicks and no orders. And then from there, things with, a lot of impressions and a very low click-through rate and no orders, time for that to go. And that's a really nice way to keep your account clean, keep your account well optimized and responsive. If you're jumping on top of this, looking at these things with low clicks, low orders, I think you have a really, really healthy account. It's probably one of the biggest issues I see. A lot of keywords, and almost all of them have 0 or 1 order in a 30-day time frame. So there's a lot of jumping around. People get 1 order on it, they crank up the bid, 5 more clicks, they bid way down. So it could be pretty tough there. And with all that said, we've covered it. What to do with low click, low sale, or no sale keywords. Elizabeth, it is an absolute privilege to hang out. I don't know if anybody noticed this, but this like 30-minute podcast episode, I think took us 2 hours to record because
Yes.
we've been having some tech troubles. We started on one platform, jumped to another platform. Zoom wasn't working. So this was a labor of love, this one.
It was.
Thanks for putting up with me and navigating these recording troubles together. But what's your favorite social network that people should follow you on? I follow you on LinkedIn. That's amazing. But if people are looking, what's up?
Yeah, so I feel like I post more on LinkedIn than I do, although I'm trying to carry over my LinkedIn posts to Facebook more, but I still have a lot of like friends and family on there, so I feel kind of bad for them.
Yes.
But this is who I am now, so this is what you're gonna get.
That's
right. Yeah, I am more active on LinkedIn as far as making my own posts. I'm more active probably on Facebook as far as helping people troubleshoot things. If I happen to be there, if you happen to ask the question, but that's probably not. It's no guaranteed. Because my time fluctuates. But LinkedIn's probably I'm most active.
Yes, you share some great stuff on LinkedIn. I'm a fan. So check her out, everybody. Elizabeth Greene, Junglr, PPC, Junglr. Elizabeth, as always, thank you. We're super happy that you're here. So until next time.
So glad to be back. Yes.
Yeah. Bye-bye.